Morning, everybody. It's absolutely tipping it down today. The north of England and the south of Scotland, where I am, is getting the heaviest of the rain. I believe it's about a foot of rain, 12 inches of rain in 24 hours. And it's certainly pretty wet out there. We went out an hour and a half ago, and Jock's still got a bit of dampness about his Mohican. It's good when it gets wet, you can spike it up a bit. Hey, jockey boy. Anyway, got to crack on with the second part of the Michael Bell discussion with by Erekose, the dude. So I've got it all lined up, ready to go, and we'll just overlap very slightly. If you recall, we left it at that point where the dude was talking about the fact that the officers involved in the cover-up of what actually happened were given awards, some not too dissimilar, of course, to the ones that convicted Steve and Brendan, also getting awards. So let's share screen. Let's share sound, and let's share that. Hold on a sec. Where did that go? Share. Yes, there we go. Let's make that full screen and then click on play. Let's say it's just talking about the
stellar work.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is it with Wisconsin rewarding just bad behavior in my mind? You know, the way that Fassbender and Wiegert extracted that horrendous train wreck of a story from Brendan that changed and had no consistency whatsoever. You know, anyways, that's what that struck me when I saw that about these officers getting awards. I just thought I'd point that out. So let's move on to the rest.
The Bell family sued the city of Kenosha for the wrongful death of Michael Bell, citing a rush to judgment and a cover-up. The family contended that because Officer Gonzalez stood between Michael and Officer Straussbaugh, the police should have been able to confirm that Michael did not have Straussbaugh's gun, but instead, Lieutenant Kruger ordered Gonzalez to shoot, and he did. The Bells further contended that the KPD knew it had made a tragic mistake and then initiated a cover-up. The Kenosha police presented an entirely different story, stating that Officer Gonzalez was standing in front of the car. From there, he couldn't confirm whether or not Michael Bell had control of Straussbaugh's weapon, but he clearly heard Straussbaugh's terrified screams. The KPD added that Gonzalez purposely angled his weapon toward the windshield to avoid shooting the other officers. The Bell family and their attorneys responded with the evidence. First, that 4 civilian eyewitnesses said Gonzalez stood to Michael's right and between Michael and Straussbaugh. Second, that the autopsy showed that Michael had been shot on the right side of his head with an exit wound on the back left. Third, the blood on the car was on the hood but not the windshield, consistent with Gonzalez firing from the right side of Michael, not the left. And fourth, that the shell casing ejected from the right side of Gonzalez's weapon was found in the grass and leaves on the right side of the car, also consistent with Gonzalez firing from Michael's right. The Kenosha officers were confronted with these discrepancies during their depositions.
Were you able to see the gun pressed against the head of Michael Bell?
Yes.
Would you please stand up in the position that you had Michael Bell at the time the shot was fired?
I was standing behind him and I had my arms around his upper shoulders.
All right. And again, Michael Bell was leaning in what posture at the time of the shot?
He was in front of me and he was more or less like this, leaning over.
And Officer, we'll strike that. What side of the head was Michael Bell shot in?
Left side.
And you could see that because Officer Gonzalez was to your left?
Yes, sir.
And you saw Officer Gonzalez with his gun out pointed towards Michael Bell's head?
Yes.
And you saw the muzzle of the gun placed against Michael Bell's head?
Yes.
And is this the first time that you've given any testimony under oath concerning this case?
Yes.
And you understand the significance of giving testimony under oath in all matters, including this one?
Yes, sir.
The autopsy finding, Roman numeral 1H, reads as follows. Trajectory of wound path through head, body in anatomic position, right to left, front to back, and slightly downwards. Did I read that correctly?
Yes, sir, you did.
Is it still your testimony under oath that Officer Gonzalez was standing in front of the Nissan at the time he put a bullet into Michael Bell's head?
Yes, it is.
Is it still your testimony under oath that Officer Gonzalez's gun was pointing at the windshield at the time he put a bullet through Michael Bell's head?
Yes.
Is it still your testimony under oath that Officer Gonzalez had his gun pressed against the left side of Michael Bell's head when he shot him?
Yes.
And is it still your testimony that Officer Gonzalez was never on the right side of Michael Bell at the time he pulled the trigger?
That's correct.
Caught in a crucial contradiction, the KPD scrambled to reconcile its claim that Gonzalez stood on the left, while the forensic evidence showed that Michael Bell was shot on the right. 8 months later, in December of 2007, KPD presented its answer in the form of a reenactment video. Officers Widener, Kruger, Strausbaugh, and Gonzalez reenacted their actions for the cameras. According to the Kenosha Police Department, Michael Bell had now grabbed Officer Strausbaugh's gun while craning his neck to expose the right side of his head to Gonzalez's weapon. They claimed that this solved the riddle, placing Gonzalez on the left while shooting Michael on the right. But the video did not exonerate the officers. Instead, it had the opposite effect, illustrating a series of glaring contradictions and further suggesting a cover-up. The video depicts Officer Gonzalez firing his weapon point blank into Michael Bell, with Lieutenant Kruger standing directly in the line of fire. This contradicted the KPD's earlier statements that Gonzalez angled his weapon toward the windshield, precisely to avoid shooting the other officers. The medical examiner observed that according to the video, Kruger would have been shot by the bullet passing through Michael Bell's head, and he would have been sprayed with blood and brain tissue, neither of which occurred. The medical examiner further noted that according to the KPD video, the shell casing would have been thrown to the left of the car, but it was actually found on the right side of the car. With their defense in free fall, the Kenosha Police Department introduced a third version of the event and a second video to address just one of the discrepancies, the location of the shell casing. The KPD now claimed that Officer Gonzalez held his gun sideways, gangster style, when he shot Michael Bell. They asserted that this would account for the shell casing being thrown to the right side of the car. But even this 11th hour change in story was rejected by the medical examiner. The autopsy showed that Michael Bell had sustained an imprint or muzzle stamp from the gun firing against his right temple. The examiner noted that in order for the muzzle stamp on Michael's head to match the KPD's version of the event, that is, with Gonzalez firing from the front and holding his weapon sideways, Michael Bell would have to have been in an exceedingly distorted position, held from behind, with his head turned around 180 degrees and tilted upward. The medical examiner called this scenario forensically impossible. In 2010, the Bell family settled their civil lawsuit against the city of Kenosha for nearly $2 million. But their victory was hollow, because questions of what really happened remain open. Also open is the possibility of criminal charges against Kenosha officials, including perjury, conspiracy, and obstruction of justice.
If I can't get this done, then nobody's going to be able to get this done, because I have the education and the resources and the commitment to get this done. So I recognize that there's a problem here. And
all right, so at the end there, you saw Michael Bell's father, Michael Bell Sr., who I will tell you right now, you should go down below into the info there and take a look at the video, the full video that talks about, Michael Bell Jr., talks about what Michael Bell Sr. went on to do, after he got his settlement and stuff, and what he went on to do in helping to create new legislation that eventually stops the police from policing themselves when there is a fatal shooting. If there is a fatal police shooting now, the agency that committed the shooting is no longer the investigating agency. It has to be an outside agency now, basically. So that's what that does, is at least gives some kind of measure of insurance that the investigation into the shooting will be objective, and that if there is any wrongdoing, that it won't be just swept under the rug. Obviously, we know that it can get pretty tight in the law enforcement brotherhood. So I would imagine it might have to be something pretty heinous still for it to really get another agency to go against fellow law enforcement officers. But I'm sure if it was heinous enough, you'll definitely probably get a reaction. But at least this gives a little bit more credibility to the investigation than having the actual agency by which the shooting was committed to investigate it. Obviously, they're going to want to cut themselves loose and free of liability. So, I mean, that just... Anyway, so it goes through what Michael Bell went through, so, and what he went on to do and stuff like that. So I think it's worth a look for anybody who's interested. So that will be in the info below the video here. As I said, the main reason for making this is so that people could see, because there are some people out there that think, how could you think that law enforcement could do such things? There's no way law enforcement could do such things. How could you think that honest officers could do such things? Look, just because you slap a hunk of metal on somebody's chest doesn't make them freaking Gandhi. It doesn't make them like somehow beyond human frailty. They have the same human frailties as the rest of us. Now, are they trained to control their emotions and handle themselves in situations and things like that that help them in their job and stuff? Yes, of course. But they are still subject to the same human frailties that all of us are. They worry about money. They worry about their kids. They worry about their wives and loved ones. They worry about all those things. All those things matter to them just as much as they matter to all the rest of the people out here in the wide world. So they are not above any human frailty. And they can do like what you saw here in this video. It can happen. So I just wanted to illustrate it here today so that people could see just what exactly it looks like when law enforcement does decide to try to cover their behind, as it were. Alright, so I hope everybody enjoyed this video. I hope it was educational. I hope you got to see now exactly what it looks like, how it can happen. And like I said, what do you think now after looking at those officers and their reenactment of how they tried to change the situation? Instead of the gun facing slightly towards the windshield, now it's like facing off in the direction where it could have went through Officer Kruger and possibly hit the officer behind him who was holding back the mom and the sister. I mean, their new scenario basically put a lot more people in danger, right? And they thought that was a good idea. And then don't even get me started on gangsta style. Holy crap. When I saw that, I was just like going, I didn't just see that. I didn't really just see that. I backed it up. I backed it up. I'm like, that must have been a delusion. I must have been like, my joking mind must have somehow inserted that. I must be like falling asleep or something. Went back. No. Gangsta style. And then you saw what the forensics proved about that, how it made that ridiculous. Basically, his head would have had to been to have attached to his neck for it to have worked that way. Yeah, basically, yeah. Would have had to reorganize Michael Bell's anatomy to where the top of his head was actually on top of his neck. Anyway. So the forensics in this case totally blow the whole story out of the water. I mean, you got to look at it, really. Think about it. Do you think these cops actually went in? I mean, watching this, I don't think a single one of them ever actually went in and looked at the forensics on this. Either they didn't go look, or maybe they tried to go look, but they weren't able to understand the papers, or there was just so much paperwork to go through that they weren't able to find the paperwork that explained like the direction of the bullet and the muzzle, and like maybe they just weren't diligent enough to go through and find it. But the fact is that they kept they kept reenacting things and changing how it happened, expecting that, oh, okay, everybody's just going to believe us because we're police officers and it was all going to go away. But because they weren't understanding the forensics involved, they kept putting their foot deeper in, the muck. So, and I don't know. I mean, it's absolutely bizarre to me. But I will give a tip of my hat to the scientists and the forensic scientists in this case. I mean, they weren't gonna go along with any crap. They were just gonna test the evidence, and the science is the science, and they didn't care about any other agendas. Basically, they were just true they were loyal to their science, and I gotta say that is refreshing. My hat's off to them, because they were honest in this case. Justice was really able to be done because, like I said, Michael Bell Sr. was able to go on and get law made that really actually makes it harder now for officers to kill somebody in the line of duty. Well, at least it makes them think twice before pulling the trigger, because they now know it won't just be their department investigating it. They know that it will be another department with people that are unknowns to them that will be coming in to investigate it, and that at least creates enough of a deterrent that if they aren't absolutely certainly frightened for their life, then they will think twice about pulling that trigger. So that's actually kind of the good thing that comes out of this, but yeah, it's a tragedy nonetheless. And as I said before, the awards, I mean, those are the awards. I mean, these officers are lying. They're totally being dishonest, and they're getting awards. I mean, what is it with Wisconsin? I don't know. Anyways, that's about it, folks, for this video. It's a sad and unfortunate thing that happened to Michael Bell, and my heart goes out to his family and his father. But I mean, his father really, really used this whole experience to try and help other people, to prevent this, or in the hopes of preventing this from what happened to him from happening to you or other people out there. So he, because of his own pain from losing his son, it motivated him to go out there and do something to help protect other citizens in Wisconsin, and that is very noble of him, and my hat's off to him as well. So if you haven't already, please hit subscribe, and we'll see ya.
Well, no, dude. immediately springs to mind. Sir Walter Scott. Oh, what a tangled web we weave when first we practice to deceive. Good news is, though, that Michael Bell Sr. is still pursuing the current Attorney General and is filing a complaint with the Governor Evers, and we wish him all the best in that. He has put together a document which lists about 96 points that his investigators have looked at and compiled, and I do have a copy of that, and I'm hoping to share that with you in a future video with 96 points. It might take part 1, 2, and 3, and I'm also hoping at some point to actually have a chance to chat with Michael Bell Sr. He's been in touch, and it's yeah, let's hope that we can get something put together. Okay, I'll leave the link to the dude's video in the description below, so you can check out exactly what the dude was on about. Well, I ain't going to be walking the dog, I'll tell you that much. It's still chucking it down, but never mind. We'll see you all again soon. Bye for now.